Grand Rising, everybody. Welcome to Thursday. Today's guest shares a powerful story of transformation. Once caught in cycles of addiction and cheap dopamine, a life changing experience with psilocybin opened the door to a new vision. In the 3 years since, they've published a book, launched the health and fitness company, and pushed their limits through ultramarathons, strongman competitions, and obstacle course races. This conversation explores how psychedelics, self-discipline, and awareness can unblock a better version of life. Welcome, John.
How you doing, Wanda? Great to
I'm
see you.
doing.
It's so funny. Just hearing you say Grand Rising. I have a friend that posted on Instagram the other day. He's like, if you post Grand Rising instead of Good Morning, I'm just not gonna talk to you.
That's my thing. That's my thing. That's funny.
Yeah, it really made me chuckle. It's been an inside joke of ours for the last week now. So I talk about it. What part of the country are you in, Wanda?
I'm in Michigan.
Okay, cool. My wife's family lives up there, actually. I haven't been up that way myself, but she was just in the middle of nowhere in Michigan visiting them like a month ago. So,
I believe it. It's a beautiful place in the summer. People say it's beautiful in the winter, but I've lived here long enough to just not feel as such.
mm, I can imagine. I grew up in the Northeast, and that seasonal depression, that really hits hard by the
It's
time this
real.
rolls around. Woof. I do not envy
Yeah,
that.
love it. So take us through, I guess, your story.
Yeah, sure. I mean, wow. I guess it really depends on where you want to start. Long history with stuff. I reached out to you in regards to the mental health stuff, right? The PTSD, the ADHD that I dealt with, and we'll just kind of start with the trauma, right? Because that's something
Yep,
that I
that's
I
where it
think a lot of
begins.
people kind of miscategorize what trauma is, right? Trauma is essentially just anything that changes the way that we view the world, the way that we interact with the world. It doesn't have to be like some majorly earth-shattering type thing, though it obviously is for so many people and was for me on a large sense. I'd gone through a lot in life. I had my parents split up at a young age, and they really didn't like each other. So there was a lot of strife and me needing to play kind of mediator between my parents and things of that nature. Growing up in a town where I didn't know many other kids my age, like the closest kids in age were to me were a couple years older, a couple years younger. So I never like really fit in with kids in school because I didn't have those other kids around my age to grow up with. So I just like I went through a lot of bullying, a lot of just trying to fit in and not really quite understanding social cues and things of that nature.
Okay.
So as time progressed and had uh, different things like a relationship that I felt really strongly about, but ended up just not treating the girl correctly, and so losing that love, and then having my first job out of college taken away from me, and what seemed like something that wasn't my fault. My office got broken into and robbed, and I got fired as a result of it, not recognizing my role in that, and so different things like that where there are just these things that kind of feel like they happen to you rather than you making a conscious decision on going down that path and saying why me as opposed to oh, what was my role in this actually. you know eh, a number of years after those things, I found psilocybin mushrooms, and it just allowed me to look at the events of my life in a much different fashion and choose how I wanted to interpret everything.
I like the way you put that. I don't think I can remember how to rephrase it, but the way things happen to you rather than, how did you say that?
I'm not sure exactly, but kind of the main message is that we all have stuff that happens to us, right? And it can feel like it happens to us rather than us playing an active role in its happening.
Yes, like that.
And it was a major, major turning point in my life when I realized that, those things that happened to me were my fault, right? I mean, they were all things that led to me being in that position, that led to those things happening or them having as monumental of an impact on me, my mental health, just where I was in life as they did. And so, it was a conversation with a guy at a bar randomly that that kind of shifted my perspective in that manner and said, "Hey, wait a second. No, all of these things, they're your responsibility. It's your fault that, your girlfriend left you. It's your fault that you got fired from this job. Whether you think it was your fault or not that the office got broken into and robbed, it was your fault for putting yourself in that position to begin with." And so, kind of that conversation started to lay the seeds and the groundwork for everything that would follow, and me accepting autonomy and accepting my role and all of these things that happened to me, and choosing to look at them with a different light and not saying, "Oh man, my life sucks because that girl broke up with me, or because I'm living in this state." At that time I was living in Connecticut and I didn't know anybody, I didn't have any friends, it was impossible to meet people because it was COVID, or the job, getting fired from that, and it's like all these things happened to me. But once I could stop saying that they happened to me and that they happened because of decisions that I made to put me in that position, my life stopped this downward spiral that had been continuing for years and years and years. And I was like, nope, time to gain control and choose what direction I want to move in.
That is a huge, I can relate because I remember that moment in my life. It's a huge pivotal point. Mine was, I was out in Pennsylvania living by myself. I had just moved out there before I had my daughter. And after I had her, my husband at the time had left. And so I was left with just myself. And that was a huge realization that it wasn't everybody else's fault that I was miserable. It was my fault.
Mm.
And so what was I going to do about it? And I just
Yeah.
remember that being very enlightening.
Yeah. So for you, what was the key turning point from there?
I started getting proactive in my mental health. I reached out to a therapist, started doing online support groups, um, and really just diving into my mental health.
Mm. But was it something that you felt like you had an awareness of before and weren't able to dive into, or was something that you didn't put any attention
No, I had
towards?
no idea. I thought it was
Mhm.
everybody else's fault. I really did. I was like, why, if people just didn't make me so mad. And, that's a good question. Like, what actually, I think I was watching Joyce Meyer, to be honest with you.
Who is that?
She is a type of pastor, but I like her because she's more raw and real.
Gotcha.
Because I just knew I was so miserable that something had to change. And I remember my aunt had kind of raised me on that stuff. So that's what I turned to,
Hmm.
thankfully.
Interesting. It all comes from different places, but it's all about, how the message, not as much as how the message is delivered, right? Because it can come in so many different fashions, whether that's from a pastor or from, some of the people that really jump started my transformation were in like the pickup artist space, and just understanding communication and understanding, the different ways of male and female attraction and things of that nature, and it just kind of like started to set the groundwork. But it's like all of these different messages can kind of bring us to the same end point, but the delivery method is often just so different. It's
That's
hilarious.
true. That's very true. I guess you already painted a picture of what your life like before psilocybin. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I painted a clear enough picture of it, because I mean, you had mentioned in the beginning addiction and stuff like that, and but that was really completely overrunning my life at that point. I'd been a heavy drinker. I'd been president of my fraternity in college, and that lifestyle had never really left me. It was something where I couldn't really fall asleep at night without a drink in my system. I would get the shakes and everything like that.
okay.
I would lie in bed and it would be 2 a.m. and I'm laying there like, okay, I know if I take a shot of whiskey, I'll be able to fall asleep. Do I want to do this and continue this cycle? Well, I guess I'm going to be drinking this weekend anyway. Might as well. So I'd get up out of bed, I'd take a shot of whiskey, I'd fall asleep, and then I just kind of continue the cycle of like always needing alcohol in my system. And, cocaine was always there when it was done socially. And then eventually, like by the end of my time with addiction, like after I moved from Connecticut to Florida and restarted my life, it became something where cocaine was there pretty much like every day. It was like doing it during the work day and everything like that. And So it was just this really deep cycle of substance abuse that felt like it controlled every part of my life. And not I wouldn't say that it controlled every part of my life, but more so that it was something that was such an integral piece of how I lived life that I couldn't see life without it. And when I found psilocybin, it allowed me to see, oh no, you can live life without this. You can go to a bar and just get a glass of water. You don't have to have a drink every time you go out to sit down at a restaurant. And so it's just like all these little things that should have been obvious, but weren't. All of a sudden were obvious, and I could say, oh wait, yeah, that's definitely a different decision I can make, and we can start to go down that path.
That's fair. Um, what was the turning point when you realized you were wasting your life?
Whew. You know, there was a number of different turning points, right? Because from the time that I like really reached rock bottom, it was September of 2021, and at that moment, I realized that my life was just not where I wanted it to be. I was cleaning toilets with most of my working time, and I had no friends, no social life in Connecticut where I was living. Just, doing alcohol and drugs with every chance that I got because it was the only thing that I had that could occupy my time. At least it felt like COVID was kind of running everything, and so when I reached rock bottom, it was just this realization that life had just taken me so far from where I wanted to be. And it was one little thing, one little thing, one little thing to try to get me back to where that was. At first it was get a new job. But then I realized after that conversation with the guy at the bar that I did have the ability to change where I lived. So, stopped looking for a job in Connecticut where I was and got to work from home. So, got to work from
Oh,
home.
nice.
Yeah, moved to Tampa, 4 months after that conversation with that guy. And, that really jump started the like actually taking control of my life. But I was still stuck in really deep loops of substance abuse of just partying really going out to strip clubs, watching porn, trying to hook up with anything I could, and like that being the only real reason that I saw for living. And when I found psilocybin 6 months later, it wasn't intentional. As I don't know if you're familiar with what's going on right now from the legalization standpoint, medicalization of psilocybin, LSD, MDMA, things of that nature. So there's been a really big push in the political landscape and the medical landscape over the past number of months, years, to uh, give people the access to psilocybin, MDMA, LSD, dimethyltryptamine, things of that nature, psychedelics, for use in mental health, because they've shown an incredible propensity to help people with things like addiction, PTSD,
Yeah.
anxiety, depression, so on and so forth. And when I found them in 2022, I had heard inklings of that, but it wasn't my primary focus. I was just trying to get high, and I was going to a concert in like a month. So I was like, let me try these and make sure that let me make sure that I feel safe taking these amongst 100,000 people.
Right.
Yeah, so you got to make sure you try. And so, it started with like a very small dose, but from that very small dose, it just kind of unlocked the key to me being able to process all of these things that had happened to me, all the traumatic things that I had gone through that I never actually sat with and gave myself time to think about. And the first thing was that relationship that I had mentioned before, and it had been 3 years plus since we broke up, but I'd never actually sat with and thought about that relationship. And so, taking that very small dose of psilocybin that first time just kind of unlocked that and allowed me to process the end of that relationship and understand, that it needed to end. Right? It wasn't something that I could just hold on to anymore, and so it allowed me to let it go. And then that kind of just started a wave of processing. A week after that, or excuse me, 2 weeks after that, I doubled the dose, and in that moment, I recognized what it was like to not have anxiety and depression for the first time in my life. And in that moment, I was just present and free and hopeful about the future and not, concerned about what had happened to me earlier in life because none of it mattered. Because at that moment, I was with two of my best friends, and we were in a beautiful part of a beautiful city, surrounded by incredible life and families and joy and happiness and wonder and beauty of nature. And so many incredible things were present to me as potential paths that my life could go from that point forward. And none of what had brought me there, none of the heartache, none of you know, the getting fired, none of the yada yada yada, none of the drugs, none of the alcohol, none of it mattered because I was right there and I knew that I had an incredible opportunity to move my life in the direction that I wanted to move it in. And so from that point forward, like all this anxiety and depression that I had known my whole life just didn't affect me in the same way, and I could process it differently and just choose to think about my life in a different way. So it was really, from that point forward that I just started being a nicer person, taking shopping carts back for people and, saying hi to the cashier at the cash register and, not having a drink when I'm going out to a bar and like all these different little things that I just wanted to be a better person and be able to do my whole life. And I just finally was able to do it.
That's beautiful. Like I love that for you. That's very profound.
Thank you, Wanda.
Yeah. Some of these you already answered. What vision of yourself did you see during that journey, and how did it differ from the person you were? You kind of just covered that.
Yeah, well, not completely because, while I did touch on some aspects of it, really the key difference was that I'd been somebody that sucked life from everybody up until that.
Oh, okay.
You know,
Yes.
I'd been someone where it's like, yeah, we can hang out with John, but like only in spurts because I'm fucking exhausting. I was needy and just needed attention. And once I realized that I could do so much to build up other people and to give more of myself than I took from others, immediately the energy around me shifted. And I knew that I wanted to be somebody that helped other people in some way. And so that became a huge North Star of mine, is just trying to find a way to make an impact for other people in a positive way. And after I had my profound life changing experience, the first message that came to me was tell your story, write your book. And so that's what I did, and I spent a year and a half writing my book because I knew that by sharing my story and being as open and honest as I am through the 200 pages of that thing, that other people could only benefit from my vulnerability and authenticity and sharing everything that went on in here. Because at the end of the day, nothing in my life changed from the moment that I took my first bite of psilocybin until a month and a half later when I started writing the book. Nothing except for how I thought about life and how I thought about, my relationships and everything like this. And so for me to have such profound realizations and recognize that literally nothing had changed was something that I just wanted to share with people because you don't know how many, I don't know, you don't know, we all don't know how many people could possibly benefit from just being able to look at life with a little bit different lens that says, hey, maybe I'm not this victim I've told myself that I am my whole life. Maybe, the things that happen to me in life aren't things that happen to me, but they're things that happen because of me. And if I start to take responsibility and shift my focus from, oh, woe is me to, oh, wow is me, I'm incredible. Let me see how I can use the incredible self that I am to make myself and other people around me better. That life will start to go in a much better direction. And so that's what I was hoping to give to people, is that strength that I was able to cultivate in myself through my experience, and hope that others might be able to resonate.
Do you think that if you had tried psilocybin earlier in your life, you would have had the same shift?
Well, so I did try it one time when I was 18. Hey, what is your familiarity level with psychedelics?
I've had a couple people on the show about it. I myself have tried it. I think I was like around 18, maybe, I don't want to say 14. But
Mhm.
in those years, I
14
tried
would
it.
be early.
Uh, I think maybe twice, once in Michigan, and then I did try it again when I moved to Florida, and that was more uh, good experience.
What part of
But
Florida?
nothing too profound. I mean, nothing that I could remember now.
Hmm. Well, so the reason that I asked is that like there's a very common saying with psychedelics, and it's common because it's very true, and that is set and setting are the two most important things to how an experience goes, right? Your mindset and your your physical condition when you go into it, and then your setting, like where you are, your location, the people around you, right? And so for me, the first time that I tried psilocybin, the first time I tried psychedelics in general, when I was 18, and it was the worst possible day of my life to do it because it was the day after I quit playing baseball, and I had been a baseball player my whole life up until that point. It was highly competitive. It was a major part of my identity. And so for me to go from losing my identity in baseball on Thursday and then Friday eating 2 grams of mushrooms and having my identity, you know, my my sense of self melt. It was two complete ego deaths back to back that I was not prepared for, and so that honestly it scared me away from psilocybin for a while because I just wasn't exactly sure what had happened. You know, it just felt like a piece of me died. I saw a childhood version of myself staring me back in the mirror, asking, "John, why'd you quit baseball?" And
Oh no.
I had to break the news. It was so heartbreaking. And, still to this day, I wish that I hadn't quit when I did. I think that I gave up on it a little too soon. But that was the conversation that I had to have with myself at that point. And so while that definitely wasn't the right time, a little bit later in life, maybe around 25, 26, it would have been really profound for me. Maybe around the time that that girl and I broke up, it might have been able to do something to let me see where my faults were and recognize that, the asshole that I was during that time in my life and work to be better. Who knows? It doesn't matter because it all happens exactly as it needs to. And if it
Hmm.
happened as it did right now, I wouldn't be here telling the story to you. So it's a beautiful circle of how all of this comes together and allows us to weave a story of exactly what certain things mean and how those realizations really shape the person that we are.
Are you comfortable with telling me how often you trip? Or
Currently,
what's that?
currently,
Yeah.
currently, yeah. So the last time that I did was probably like a month and a half ago. It's generally like every 2 to 3 months. I kind of use it as like a mental reset for myself. Kind of wipe the slate clean and analyze exactly what's going on in my life, who I am, how I'm showing up for the people, how I intend to progress in life moving forward. And so it's like a really big mental reset for me. And I advocate to people in my life that they do the same thing, maybe once a quarter or so. Just use it as a way to self-analyze, reflect, and see what direction you're supposed to go in moving forward.
I agree. What is the difference you think in microdosing and doing it, once every how often?
Yeah. So key difference being that like I like to think of microdosing as kind of like keeping our antennas up, right? Because there's a connection to God, the universe, the creator, some divine inspiration that comes to me and a number of people while using psilocybin mushrooms. And I think that microdosing, they have tests done for like ADHD and, focus and things of that nature, and these things that are supposed to be quantifiable. Um, but I think that it's deeper than that, and it's something that we don't quite understand as humans yet in terms of exactly how it works. But it helps me stay connected to the universe, the greater that's all around. And so I feel like microdosing helps to keep those antennas up, when those larger doses are more connecting with your true self, connecting with the universe, connecting with life around you, and understanding how you can be that best version of yourself in a more macro sense.
Okay. Um, for anybody that's, I don't want to get there yet. Okay. Um, okay. How do you respond to skeptics who dismiss psychedelics as just drugs?
Uh, Try them. I mean, that's all I can really say. Try to do your research, experience them yourself. If you have any experience with, you know, if you have experience with alcohol, you have experience with cocaine, you have experience with, meth or whatever, right? Any of these other things that are drugs that actually ruin your life, right? And
Yes.
I'm not sugarcoating this, is because alcohol and cocaine literally were ruining plus. And then you have an experience with psilocybin, and I'm going to say this not in a party sense, not in going out into a field with 100,000 other people, but doing it in a controlled setting that allows you the opportunity to be with your thoughts and think through life. You're going to have deeply profound experiences that will fundamentally shift the way that you think about drugs, right? Because psilocybin and cocaine are two totally different animals.
Yes. Yeah. Is psilocybin the only form of psychedelics that you try?
No, no, no. I use LSD. I use MDMA. Um, I've attempted DMT, but I haven't really had a breakthrough experience with that yet. But
Okay.
yeah, I utilize. I actually microdosed with LSD earlier today. I'll typically microdose with LSD. Yeah, it kind of goes through cycles of if between LSD and psilocybin, which I'm microdosing more frequently. Right now, it's been psilocybin. I haven't microdosed with LSD in probably a month or so. But this morning, I was like, you know what? I think it's time to start reintroducing that, and it's kind of a feel thing for me. Um, uh, and then, MDMA, I'll use them usually more of a social, or if, my wife and I are having a very nice night together and we just want to have,
Oh,
in communication in a beautiful way.
I don't know much about MDMA, and what I've heard about DMT really scared me.
So
Can you?
MDMA is a heart opener, right? It essentially what happens when you use MDMA is that it releases both dopamine and serotonin, which just means that you have all of these like beautiful, lovey, positive
Uh,
emotions going at the same time. And so it's used a lot in couples therapy because it really breaks down the walls between who you are and who your partner is, and what it means to be in a relationship together. And so it really helps you work towards a more beautiful understanding of your role in each other's lives. Now, DMT is a much more intense psychedelic, and I haven't quite had a breakthrough on that yet. But DMT, you're supposed to be able to get into a totally different realm that kind of shows you the inner workings of the world and what it actually is. And so I'm looking forward to when that time comes that I'm able to see what that all entails. But eventually.
right. Um, and mm, so I saw this on True Life MTV one time, and it's on my bucket list to go on one of those kind of getaways and try not ashwagandha, ayahuasca.
Ayahuasca.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
so ayahuasca primarily it uses DMT, and so
oh, okay.
that's the active chemical there, and so yeah, that would be same thing. DMT is actually a chemical that's released in our brains when we die, and is present in every living organism in some fashion, but it's produced in a high potency by the copy vine and one other that they use to mix together to make ayahuasca. But yeah, it's supposed to be a really powerful experience and something that I love to try myself someday.
Is MDMA Molly?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, that puzzle pieces together.
So after that experience, what were first concrete steps you took to reform your life? I think you touched on a little bit of all of these, but we'll just
Yeah, I mean, so I mean, the first and foremost, was stopping cocaine. I tried psilocybin for the first time on October 9th of 2022, and I did cocaine for the final time on October 30th of 2022. And that was just kind of a conscious decision. It wasn't I'm trying to give up cocaine. It was just I no longer like this. This no longer has a place in my life. And just deciding to stop it. And I've had no urge or desire to do it since then. It hasn't been something that I've needed to fight it. I've had I've had cocaine in my possession in the 3 years since then, and I've had not had a desire to do it once. And so that's like a really profound thing. If you know anybody that's dealt with cocaine addiction, it's often something that like really tears at you and is something that you're fighting and fighting and fighting. But I've had no desire to do that whatsoever. Alcohol was a little bit more difficult just because it's such a prominent piece of life that you see it as kind of necessary, or at least I did, for a year following my initial psilocybin experience. But a year after that experience, I just decided that alcohol had no place in my life either. So that's been gone for nearly 2 years now. But really, the primary thing was just getting my life in order. Making my bed every day, flossing my teeth every night, holding myself accountable to these little
little things.
things. Yep. Yep, holding myself accountable to those little things that were just small wins to start the day and small wins to finish the day. And if you do those things at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day, that your bookend's going to be strong and that you're going to have a foundation set that's going to really set the tone for the rest of it.
I agree. Um, so were there setbacks along the way?
Of
Um,
course. Yeah, I mean, not at all really with, the substances. I had that under control, which is astounding to be able to say, but that was really what was gifted to me by the mushrooms, is just this like no desire, really no craving to go back to that type of lifestyle. But the thing that was tough, right, was that I lost a lot of friends along the way. So many friends that would be out with me, drinking until 3 a.m. or, at my apartment until 5 doing lines of coke with me. Like they were just no longer there, right? And they weren't bad people, they were just like me, right? They were successful, they were, young, they were having fun. But we just no longer wanted the same things in life. And so I lost so many friends, and like I had like a major social network that just really crumbled because I no longer wanted to be a part of the things that really held that together. So yeah, it became it became a challenge. It became a challenge big time to not crave that anymore, not crave the safety of that social network that I had built, and to recognize that I wanted a life that was bigger than what I had before, and to continue to strive to go towards that, and it started like I said with just making my bed and flossing my teeth, but eventually that started to snowball into biking and then running and then getting back into weightlifting and strongman and now doing ultramarathons and running halfway across Florida and you know and these fun.
that I didn't know. That's
Yeah,
incredible.
yeah, I ran a 100-mile ultramarathon 3 weeks ago.
Damn.
Yeah, yeah. Finished in under 24 hours, which is a pretty crazy accomplishment. And then I got on stage to talk about it 12 hours later.
How was that?
I mean, the best weekend of my fucking life.
I bet.
Yeah, my dad flew down from Jersey for it. He helped me with the race, and it was just so beautiful having him alongside me the whole way. My wife biked alongside me for 70, 80 miles
Oh,
of it. Yeah, she's the greatest. And then my best friend finished the last 22 miles with me. So, having them all alongside me, it was just such a beautiful experience. And then being able to get on stage 12 hours later and talk about it to, you know, a group of people here in St. Pete that's just super supportive of what I'm doing and the message that I'm putting out into the world of the incredible potential of psychedelics to help us make incredible changes for ourselves and do incredible things in our lives. And so I was just really, 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 really grateful for the opportunity to do that and for it to all come together as well as it did. Like, I completely crushed my expectations of how long it would take me to do this and, the type of condition that I would be in to be able to speak about it afterward. It was just, it all exceeded my expectations to the 20th degree.
How long did you think it would take?
Um, if you had asked me, I really wouldn't have given you an answer because it's something that I'd never attempted before. I had done 46 miles 2.5 months prior to that, and that took me 11 hours. And so I was thinking maybe like 30 minute or 30 hours ish as a rough estimate, and I finished in 23. So, far
And
exceeded
there's
that.
no stopping? There's no
Uh,
stopping?
no, I mean there's some aid stations and stuff like that for you to refuel, but yeah, I mean I didn't sit the whole time. Only
That's
to change my
crazy.
shoes.
That's like 3 work days. No, or work shifts. That's crazy.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Just constantly moving. I did 200,000 total steps in that time. It ended up only being 98.4 miles, but who's counting?
Um, what inspired you? You covered this too, but what inspired you to write and publish your book and I guess it's on audio too?
Yeah, it is on audiobook. I published the audiobook earlier this year. It's just been out for like a month or two at this point. And so, that was like a whole year plus after publishing the book initially. But really, it's just that I wanted to share my story because I knew that so much, there's so much more than I ate mushrooms, now my life is better, right? There was so much that went on in here that could only be explained in a very long format like a book, right? And so I just needed to be able to put that out there and say, okay, this is my life, this is my brain. If you want to see how this might this might extrapolate to your experience and how you could gain your own insight from it, please be my guest and gain strength from this. So I just really wanted to put my story out there and see who I could touch with it.
Good. I'm very thankful that you did because it sounds like you've built a really beautiful life.
Incredible. Absolutely incredible. Yeah. Yeah. It just, even this past weekend, my birthday was on Tuesday. And, so on Saturday, we had a Friendsgiving at the house, slash my birthday. And so we had probably 50 people here. And so just to be able to share my home with so many incredible people that have come into my life over the past 3 years, it's been a magical journey. No pun intended.
Well, happy belated birthday. How old are you now?
33, baby.
Shut up. That's incredible. That's incredible. That's how old I am. And
Hey,
I can't imagine accomplishing those things. Like I can, but I can't. I can't.
well, start dreaming.
Anything's possible.
Start
Wow.
dreaming.
You really
Because
said
3 years ago, you kidding me? Running 100 miles? You kidding me? Writing a book? You kidding me? Publishing an audiobook? You kidding me? Being married? No, no, none of these things I would have imagined were possible. Well, I guess I would have imagined it, but that's where it starts, right? It starts with a thought. And so, whatever you believe that you can achieve, just put your mind to it and start making one good decision after the other after the other. It starts with making your bed and flossing your teeth. And it snowballs from there, and it's just how can you consistently make a better decision to just be a little bit better.
since podcasting and interviewing those that do set psychedelics, I've definitely like expanded my want to try them. Right now
Hmm.
I'm going through a journey through mental health court and I have to be absolutely clean for the next 3 years. And it's been 8 months so far. And this in itself has been an enlightening journey because I always, smoked weed. And
Hmm.
this is the longest I've been sober for.
How do they control that?
Drug testing.
Okay. You might want to double check me, but I don't believe that LSD or psilocybin show up on drug tests. So that might be an interesting thing for you to explore.
I think I'd be too scared. I think
Mm.
I think I'd be too scared that, who's watching or whatever like that. And plus this is like a really, I don't know, it's a cool goal for me to set because like I said, I've never been sober for this long,
Mm.
and where I'm at in my life, like I just want to see what my potential is, but I also feel like psychedelics could, because I believe I do have very limiting beliefs on myself just because the way I was raised, and yeah, basically the way I was raised. So I do have very limited beliefs, but I know my heart's there, and I enjoy getting everybody's perspectives because it enlightens mine and makes me feel like, I can do more things than that are just within my grounds of mind, if that makes sense.
Yeah, allow yourself to dream. I feel like that's exactly what you're saying is that you're dreaming, but you're not dreaming big enough for yourself.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Dream big, baby.
Um, okay. What has been the most surprising feedback you've received from listeners or readers?
Um, you know, I would really just say like the amount of people that tell me that my story has impacted them in some way is just so fulfilling. It really just it touches me, because you don't know who's listening, you don't know who's watching, you don't know who's taking a piece of whatever it is. And so when people read my book or they hear me on podcasts or they just see the social media content that I create and they share with me what that does for them. It's just so incredible every time to hear that type of feedback and know that I'm making the type of impact that I had intended to when I started living my life in this way.
Are you on TikTok?
Yes, it's definitely not my primary. I, you know, I typically use TikTok as a way to post reels and stuff like that to test them and then put them on Instagram.
Oh, okay.
Uh,
Oh,
but
so you're mostly on Insta?
mhm.
Okay. I do believe I linked your website in the, what do you call that? The episode description, because I imagine that's where you can get the book.
Yep, the book is linked on my website, getpsychedfitness.com. It's primarily through Amazon. It's also audiobook, Audible, and Apple Books, so you can find it on there.
Okay. We've got a couple more questions. I do have therapy at noon. Um, I kind of like this. Do you see physical endurance as a metaphor for the inner work you've done?
Um, you know, I don't know if it's really a metaphor for the inner work that I've done because the inner work that I've done is so different, right? Because it's not about enduring, right? It's not about fighting through. It's about actually analyzing and figuring out the what's, right? The all the things that go into it. When the endurance work is more about, okay, how badly do you want it? How badly do you want to keep going? What are those things that are tearing at you, that are telling you to stop, to saying it's not worth it, you can just go home, it's it's 50 more miles, you don't need to go out and run another 50 miles, you already did 50, like this is crazy, you're already no 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 no. Right, everything that comes to you during the ultra marathons and stuff like that is very vastly different than the work that I needed to do to get my life out of where it was. But it is uh, perfectly suited towards building the life that I want to build right now. And that's that, no amount of work is going to be enough. There's no there is no limit to it, right? Because there's a never ending amount of people that can be helped, that can be positively impacted. And so no matter what, there's always something that I can do to help someone else, to touch someone who hasn't met me or hasn't heard my story or hasn't experienced what I can do to help, uplift them or just connect with them on a personal level or whatever it is. And so, I'm always going to be striving towards that finish line that never really seems like it's coming, because it doesn't ever come, right? But it's always just a matter of continuing to push and continue to be better for yourself and the people in your life.
Where do you see yourself in 5 or 10 years?
I want to be known as somebody who completely changes the world's understanding of psychedelics and specifically psilocybin mushrooms. What that means exactly, I don't know. I intend to just keep pushing, keep doing things to make myself
Doing
as
this, bringing
undeniable
awareness.
as possible. Yep, exactly. And so little by little, uh, you know, tell my story, connect with people, and watch the world benefit.
It's extremely powerful. It really is. And it's beautiful what you've built. Very inspiring. Um, okay. If someone listening feels stuck in their own destructive habits, what's the first step you would encourage them to take?
Really, it's just getting clear on what matters to you. Because when I was stuck in my destructive habits, the the primary thing was that what mattered to me was what other people thought of me.
Oh, yeah.
And once I realized that I'd been doing everything in my life for the approval of others, that's when things really started to shift. That's when it no longer mattered to me if I had a drink or if I had Coke or if I, got with girls or anything like that. Because I recognized that I did all of those things because it was just validation. It was just what mattered to me was what other people thought of me. And so that's what I would encourage other people to do is find out what really matters to them. Because once I figured that out and could say, no, what really matters to me is the type of impact that I can have for other people. What really matters to me is the connections that I have with the people in my life, and not just from a cheap, go out and party with people standpoint, but what is the actual type of impact? What's the long lasting effect that I can have on people that makes me feel like a good person for getting up and doing that on an everyday basis? That's when my life really started to change. And so that's what I would encourage other people to do is find out what really matters to them and follow that with every decision that you make.
I can really appreciate that. I really like that. Um, and a, cou- okay, I know I said a couple more questions, but a couple more questions because I feel like you have so much insight. We could go all day. Um, how do you balance advocating for psychedelics with emphasizing discipline, fitness, and personal responsibility?
Well, I think they go hand in hand. People think about psychedelics with this stigma of, you're going to eat them and you're going to see funny colors and you're going to go into a different world and all this stuff, right? When used correctly, yes, all those things still happen, but it gives you the ability to self-analyze, right? And so it helps bring discipline to a totally different level because you're able to do this all the self-analyzation. And so they're done in tandem, right? It's not a one or the other thing. It's not a, psychedelics. Ooh, how does, that, you know, shouldn't that negatively impact your running or lifting? Or no, 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 no. It helps on a major level.
I feel like you could be a poster child for psychedelics.
Yeah, that's my goal.
And
Pushing.
um, if you could go back and speak to the version of yourself chasing cheap dopamine, what would you say?
It's all gonna be all right, brother.
I
It's all gonna be all
can see that.
right.
Tap, tap. It's all gonna be all right, brother. Just ride the wave, baby.
February.
Is there anything that you'd like to cover that we didn't cover?
um, well, Lana, I would definitely like to know more about you and your story, but I don't think we really have time for that. Um,
Aw.
but I really just want to thank you for taking your time for your platform and for sharing that with me. And I look forward to seeing how you progress as a person. I'm grateful that you're taking this time for yourself from a mental health standpoint to really find out what it all means to you and how you can show up for the people in your life. So, thank you for providing this platform and thank you for being you.
Yeah, thank you for being so supportive and for being here. And know that you are welcome back anytime. I would really be interested in to see where you're at in, however amount of time.
Yeah,
Because
well,
you
let's
are on a beautiful journey and it is, uh inspiring.
thank you, Wanda. Let's
Yeah,
connect on Instagram and we'll stay in contact and we'll follow up in a little bit.
cool. Sounds good.
All right,
Thank you.
of course. Enjoy your therapy session.
Thank you.